Hello everybody, this is Scott Hartley from thedailyexertion.com. Today I'm going to be explaining to you what HTTP 2.0 is, why it matters, and why most websites are simply not going to be making use of it. Now, there was big talk about HTTP 2.0 being released. It was going to make the web faster. It was going to be a better standard that was meant to replace Google Spidey in version 1.2. Now, there are a couple really big caveats with this thing that makes the entire plan almost moot. If you are using HTTP 2.0, or you're wanting to rather, you'll only be able to do so if you're using the site on HTTPS, meaning you have to have a valid SSL. Now, if you're doing something like Blogger, you can easily turn this on through here by going to your blog's main settings, go to Basic, Save, and then all you have to do is go and view the site. And then it won't be automatically redirected there, but what you can do is you can put in HTTPS, and now in theory you are using SSL 100%, and your site's over HTTP 2.0 as far as I know. I'm not 100% sure whether Google is making use of HTTP 2.0 on Blogger sites. That being said, the only way it can be used is if you actually are running an SSL on your site, and the benefits don't really outweigh the cost. Let's explain why. HTTP 2.0 basically says when your browser is making a TCP connection to a server, it can only open up sometime, depending on the technology and the years. It used to be 4, it can only download 4 items at a time, 8, and these limited connections are what cause a lot of webmasters to start combining files. Like, instead of having a bunch of small CSS files, it used to be they'd have one giant one in the header, and that it would that they would include like one giant JavaScript file. And this worked. It actually worked very well for quite a while, until recently when it kind of began to fall apart. In HTTP 2.0, it actually makes no sense now to be combining all of your JavaScript and CSS files into one file, because the browser can open up an unlimited amount of requests for each file. So if there's 10 JavaScript files, it will open up a connection for each one and download them all in parallel. Now, you gotta be wondering, well, wouldn't it still make sense to try and make them into one file to reduce the amount of connections opening? No. Browsers are actually not going to be slower depending on the amount of TCP connections that they open. So if I have 30 files on there, it may actually be smarter to have 30 different files running on the same site, because it's faster than having one giant one in the header and having it look ahead and download that one giant one, because it's not downloading them linearly, it's downloading them all in parallel. All files are being downloaded at the exact same time. It opens up a connection for a certain amount of files here, and it downloads them. In theory, if you counted up all these items, and let's just assume that they're all served over SSL, of course, they all will be downloaded at the exact same time. Now, there's a couple issues with this. There is a major performance issue with switching over to SSL. In fact, I demoed using the Cloudflare one on the Arcade Corner, and its load time went from 1.3 seconds to 7 seconds because SSL is slow, and the redirecting caused it to be really annoying. Now, this is to say, if you have a site that's already using SSL or requires to use SSL, like an e-commerce website, or a form of social media, dating website, anything of that sort, it's going to work wonders for you. In fact, the optimization guide for you is fairly simple. However, if you're using a site that has a mixed content, or some content's over SSL and some's not, you gotta be careful. Or if you're just doing a standard blog and don't need an SSL currently, or you're just not generating enough revenue to do so, you kind of are you're in the hot seat, so to speak. HTTP with HTTP 1.2 and HTTP 2.0 are pretty much all tied around getting SSL at speed. That's because Google essentially wrote both of them. HTTP 2.0 was pretty much pushed by Google. HTTP 1.2 introduced Spidey, which was also written by Google. And the problem with these changes is they don't affect normal sites. And there was a proposal to put it on non-HTTPS sites. There was a proposal. And I don't think it ever went around to it or ever took off. Because there's a giant push to get the entire internet over HTTPS, which is stupid. It's not going to work for everyone. Because you have to get hosting. You have to get hosting services to improve their service that can actually handle an SSL. And even when you do, there will be performance problems across the board. Now, this does go to say that if you are using HTTPS, you have a really simple optimization guide. We'll just take Blogger, for example, and then I'll go into WordPress. But if you're on Blogger, you really don't... Really, the only things you should be worrying about is taking all your CSS and making it into a file. Because inline CSS and inline JavaScript is still bad. It is still slow. It can still lead to performance issues because it's not cached by the browser. Large amounts of inline CSS is not cached. So, you have to be careful about you have to be careful about how you're doing it. The general rule of thumb is if it all fits in one file reasonably, put it in there. If you're on a Blogger site and you're just trying to make one solid CSS file so you can manage, that's perfect. Just take it, plop it in a file, and you're done. You don't even need to really worry about all this nonsense. Compress it. Compressing your CSS and JavaScript is still the recommended practice. You should also be compressing HTML. And that truly runs down to about all of it. Compress your HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Don't combine them into as few files as possible. It's no longer needed. If you only need one file, though, and it's really small, don't worry about it. But there are some themes out there on WordPress, and I've seen these things that are almost like megabyte in size for styles. Don't combine all of it into one file over HTTPS. Serve it into smaller files so it's easier for the browser to download. But still compress it. So instead of, combining them all into one giant file, just use something like W3 Total Cache and compress them all. Don't worry about combining them all. Just compress them. If you're over HTTP, though, you still got to deal with all the same hectic crap that we've had to do for a while now. You get the short end of the stick here. One of the other things that is still going to be recommended, and even though you could argue it's up for debate, is the use of... lazy loading. Lazy loading images and videos. Now, just because your browser can download 400 million things at once, for some reason, that's just a number I made up, does not mean you should be putting it through that much. Images should still be lazy loaded, as should any content like videos, because it still improves the performance and reduces the initial page size. Remember that if you're serving a responsive site, it has to work across everything. And it has to be fast. Not only that, but for people on slower internet connections, images can be expensive. I mean, if you look at the homepage of... And this isn't a completely done homepage. It is not light. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 images, 12, 13, 14 images, and then 20, 22, 26 images. And then all the JavaScript files and etc. Well, 27 if you count the logo. All these are images. Opening up, just because you can download all these images at once doesn't mean you necessarily should be. Because your browser can download many things at once, but it shouldn't be downloading many large things at once. So lazy loading images should still be done. Anytime you can, lazy load your images. Lazy loading videos also helps. Other than that, the technology is pretty much the same. Same standards. If you're on HTTP, continue to do what you've always been doing. I recommend looking at HTTPS in the future. If you're generating the necessary traffic, then do it. If you're using a blogger's site and it's new, and I just made this one as a demo dummy site to show off the HTTPS, and you can run HTTPS, do it. Stick with it. Your site will do much better for it. You'll be much better off for doing it. But remember to be smart about how you're integrating HTTPS with your site and making sure that all your content is also over HTTPS. And truly, if you've done all that, then there's nothing else to worry about. Your site will be golden, and all you have to do is just keep rolling along. Just keep trying and let the growth come naturally. HTTP 2 overall was a really smart and good update for the internet. We gotta wait for technology and software to catch up with it. We gotta wait for hosting providers to update, get better hardware, so that way they can all hand out SSL. And with as many free SSLs that are out there now, like Let's Encrypt and the one from Cloudflare, there's almost zero reason to worry. Everyone can get an SSL for free if they use Cloudflare, or if they use the Let's Encrypt, so that way they have one on their host server. All of these are great tools, not just for you, for the internet as a whole. Make use of as many tools as you can in order to grow, to make your website better. Thank you all very much for watching. Please stay tuned for the next video. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, put them below and I'll make sure to address them. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.